Given a mandate to acquire land, those entrusted with its stewardship faced many challenges. Chief among them was doing so in a practical, yet responsible and sensitive manner. Acquiring private land was not always met with open acceptance. It took years, sometimes decades, to persuade individuals to sell their property. Those who live along its borders, in many instances, have come to cherish the trail they first opposed. This patient approach, coupled with human nature, gave rise to many touching, memorable, and often humorous stories.
I started my land acquisition experience in a section of the trail on Catawba and Tinker Mountain. That section had many wonderful people that we dealt with, probably about 90 to 100 landowners. And one particular landowner came to mind. He lived in a hollow up in Botetourt County. He had a farm that went to the top of the mountain. And I used to call him when I was going to Roanoke to see if I could meet with him. And he always would put me off. He would always say, "Not now." And so I did this numerous times. I would call and every month or two, and he would remind me by just saying, "Not now, maybe sometime later." So it was one January, I believe, and it was quite cold and rather nasty out. And I called him up and I said, "Could I come see you?" And it was surprising to me that he said, "Come on out." So I went to Roanoke. I had my little government AMC Green Hornet back in those days. And I went to go to his house, and it was a real long drive up to the house, and I found out that the road was totally iced in. So what I did was I figured that I wasn't going to let him win this time, since he said I could come on out. So I got out, put my coat on, and started walking the road. And at the end of the road, when I reached there he was in his Jeep waiting for me and invited me into the house, and we were able to talk about the land and come back many occasions after that. But it was rather funny, in my opinion, that I finally had the opportunity to meet with him, but the challenge was a little bit more than I expected, and I think he appreciated that we made that effort. So it was, in the end, we ended up buying the land, and actually we bought an easement on that property, and it's still there today. And it's right where the mountain turns going towards Tinker Mountain and Catawba Mountain. So that's my short story for what it's worth.
Well, land acquisition is a lot about building relationships, whether we're talking about building relationships with members of Congress to support funding for the trail program, or whether we're talking about dealing with landowners. One such incident was with Don King with the National Park Service. He had been working for some time to acquire McAfee's Knob, one of the iconic places along the Appalachian Trail, and also quite a few lands along Tinker Mountain to the north. He had come to an impasse with one particular property owner there, an older widow who owned quite a bit of land, and Don was trying to acquire a portion of that property, but it involved an exchange of land or a right-of-way with a neighboring landowner who also was an elderly woman, and the two women hadn't spoken to each other in 40 years. So Don invited me to try to help crack that nut, and we initially met with one of the women and then separately with the other. And you could tell that there was just a real frost over their relationship. I never quite understood what the root of it was. But then we lighted on the idea of getting the two of them together, and they agreed to do that. We sat on the front porch with mint juleps and just got the two of them talking a little bit about their past. And after a half hour or so of pretty shaky interaction, they started to rebuild a relationship that hadn't existed for more than 40 years. And ultimately the exchange was agreed to, and the land was acquired, and it helped complete the Tinker Mountain stretch of the project.
The story of the land acquisition program, the land protection program for the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, is a remarkable story, and a story of this scope and this magnitude doesn't come without some controversy. During the early days of the land acquisition program, a citizens group called Citizens Against the New Trail, or CANT, formed. Primarily, that was the agricultural community, or a group of farmers who couldn't believe that the National Park Service would come in, buy up their land just for a hiking trail. They didn't believe that we would manage the trail to preserve the agricultural character, which was the cultural heritage of the trail in this neck of the woods. Some of that controversy died down, but perhaps more importantly, to help dispel some of that controversy, was the fact that the AT community, which made a promise to our local neighbors that we would keep the trail in productive agriculture, was a promise that we kept. It took decades to win their trust, but I think we've been successful in doing so. So much so that recently 2 of our local townships awarded ATC plaques noting the achievement and the help that ATC has achieved with protecting open space and agricultural farmland. It's a great story.